Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're tackling some really cool research that could change how we think about eating.
Yeah, this is a big one. It really kind of turns things upside down.
Seriously, scientists think they may have found the stop eating switch in the brain.
Crazy, right?
Totally. And it's all thanks to this new study from Columbia University.
Just published this month in Cell.
Yep, Cell, like one of the top science journals.
Definitely top tier.
So, we all know what it feels like to be full, right? But how does our brain actually decide when we've had enough?
That's the thing. We know a lot about what makes us feel hungry.
Like those rumbling stomach growls.
Exactly, but the stop eating signal, that's been a total mystery.
Until now.
Exactly. This new research might finally have the answer.
So where did they start?
Well, they focused on a specific part of the brain called the brainstem.
Ah, the brainstem. Isn't that like the really old part of our brain?
Yeah, it's like the control center for all our basic functions. Breathing, heart rate, the important stuff.
Keeps us alive and kicking.
Literally. So finding the stop eating mechanism there is pretty wild.
What do you mean?
Well, it suggests that this isn't just some new thing, evolutionarily speaking.
Ah, so it's been around for a long time.
A really long time, like way back to our ancient ancestors.
They're poking around in the brainstem and boom, what do they find?
They found a completely new type of neuron. And get this, it seems to be acting like a stop eating switch.
No way. Like a switch that just flips off our appetite?
That's the idea.
Hold on. How did they even find these tiny neurons? Were they like searching with a magnifying glass?
Haha, not quite. They use this really advanced technique called spatially resolved molecular profiling.
Spatially resolved, say that 5 times fast.
I know, right? But basically, it's like a super-powered microscope.
Ah, okay. So they could zoom in on individual brain cells.
Yep, even in really complex areas like the brainstem.
Wow, that's impressive. But okay, so they found these neurons. How did they know they were actually involved in feeling full?
They did something pretty amazing. They actually controlled these neurons using light.
Wait, what? Control neurons with light?
It's a real thing. It's called optogenetics.
Okay, that sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It kind of is. It's super cool. Basically, they can turn neurons on or off using flashes of light.
So they just shined a light on these neurons, and the mice suddenly stopped eating.
That's what they thought might happen, but it wasn't quite so simple.
So what happened?
Well, when they activated these neurons, the mice did eat less.
Okay, so it worked.
Yeah, but they didn't just stop eating abruptly. They gradually slowed down their eating.
Interesting. So it's not like an on-off switch, more like a dimmer switch.
Exactly. It's like our brains have this built-in mechanism for slowly turning down our appetite.
That makes sense. Sometimes you just feel satisfied after a few bites. Other times you just keep going and going.
Right. It could be these neurons at work fine-tuning how much we eat.
Okay, so far so good. But here's the big question everyone's thinking. Do humans have this same stop eating switch?
That's what everyone wants to know. The study was done on mice.
Right, of course.
But here's the thing. The brainstem is a really, really old part of the brain.
Like we talked about before.
Yep, and it's so important for basic survival that it's incredibly similar across different species.
So mice, humans, all pretty much the same down there.
Pretty much. So there's a good chance humans have these neurons too.
Fingers crossed. Because if we do, this could be huge for understanding things like overeating and maybe even helping people manage their weight.
Absolutely. It could open up a whole new world of possibilities.
All right, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to the research. What else did they find out about these stop-eating neurons?
Well, they also looked at how hormones affect these neurons.
Hormones, like the ones that control our appetite.
Exactly, and they found something interesting. A hormone that's known to increase appetite actually silenced these stop-eating neurons.
So it's like a battle going on in our brains. One signal saying eat and another saying stop.
Kind of, and on the flip side, they found that a GLP-1 agonist actually activated the neurons.
GLP-1 agonist, that sounds familiar.
It's a type of drug that's already used to treat obesity and diabetes.
Right, so it's not a new thing.
Nope, people are already using it.
Interesting. So even though this research is super new, it's already connecting to things we know about?
Exactly, and the fact that these drugs seem to be interacting with these stop-eating neurons, even if it's indirect, is pretty exciting.
It's like all the pieces are starting to fit together.
Yeah, it really shows how complex our brains are and how much we still have to learn about how they work.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Brainstem, special neurons, light switches, even a potential connection to existing medications.
Yeah, we've been all over the place.
I know, it's a lot. So before we go any further, let's just pause and recap what we've learned so far. What are the key takeaways about this stop eating switch?
The biggest takeaway: scientists may have finally found a crucial part of how our brains tell us to stop eating. It's this group of special neurons in the brainstem.
And these neurons are like super detectives, gathering information from all over our bodies, to decide when we've had enough. They look at what we're eating, how full our stomach is, and even what nutrients we're absorbing.
And what's really exciting is that hormones and medications seem to be able to influence these neurons. That opens up a lot of possibilities for new ways to help people manage their weight and maybe even treat other conditions related to appetite.
This is all super exciting, but I know there's way more to this story.
Oh, absolutely. We've just scratched the surface.
So stay tuned, because when we come back, we're diving deeper into the potential implications of this discovery. New treatments, a better understanding of our relationship with food, the whole shebang.
It's going to be good. Don't miss it.
Welcome back, everyone.
Ready for more?
Oh yeah, I'm hooked. After that last segment, I'm like dying to know where this research could lead.
Well, let's just say it has the potential to be a real game changer, especially when it comes to obesity.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How could this discovery actually help people struggling with weight management?
I mean, imagine if we could actually target those stop-eating neurons.
Like make them stronger or something?
Exactly. If we could find a way to boost that stop-eating signal, people might feel full sooner.
And wouldn't that make it easier to resist all those tempting treats?
Exactly. Right now, it's like our brains are constantly bombarded with signals to eat. But what if we could give people a stronger stop signal?
It would be like giving them a more sensitive fullness meter. Like, okay, I'm good. I don't need another slice of cake.
Exactly. And that could be a real game changer for people who are struggling with their weight. You know, they wouldn't feel like they're constantly battling their own biology.
Right, because it's not just willpower, right? There's a lot of biology involved.
Absolutely. And obesity is so complex, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not. But this research could offer a whole new tool for addressing the problem.
For sure. If we can understand how those neurons work, we might be able to develop new treatments that actually target the root of the issue.
Okay, so how would that actually work? What kind of treatments are we talking about?
Well, one possibility is developing new drugs that specifically target those stop-eating neurons.
So basically a pill that tells your brain you're full, stop eating.
Pretty much. It would essentially mimic the signal that those neurons naturally send.
That sounds pretty sci-fi, but also kind of scary. What about side effects?
Yeah, that's always a concern with any new drug, especially when we're talking about the brain.
The brain is a delicate thing. We don't want to mess with it too much.
Exactly. That's why safety has to be the absolute top priority. We need tons of research before we even think about giving these kinds of drugs to people.
Definitely, safety first. But remember how you mentioned those GLP-1 agonists earlier? Those drugs that are already being used to treat diabetes and obesity?
Yeah, I remember.
Well, those seem to activate those stop-eating neurons too, right?
That's right, even if it's an indirect effect.
So maybe we could use those existing drugs for weight management. They've already gone through all the safety testing.
It's definitely worth exploring. It could be a much faster way to get a new treatment out there.
Okay, so that's super promising. But I know there are always challenges with medical research. What are some of the roadblocks researchers still need to overcome?
Well, this is all still really new, right? We need way more research to fully understand how those stop-eating neurons work, especially in humans.
Right, because so far we've only seen this in mice.
Exactly. And we need to figure out how those neurons interact with all the other parts of the brain involved in appetite. It's a whole network up there.
A complicated network. So yeah, lots more research to be done.
Tons. But hey, even if it takes years, imagine the possibilities.
Okay, let's imagine for a second that everything goes perfectly. We confirm these findings in humans, develop safe and effective treatments, the whole 9 yards. What kind of impact could this have on the obesity epidemic?
It could be huge. I mean, obesity is a major health crisis worldwide.
It's linked to heart disease, diabetes, certain types of cancer.
Not to mention all the social stigma and discrimination people face. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's a big problem. So if we could address the biological side of things, it could help a lot of people.
Millions, potentially. It could improve their health, reduce their risk of those serious diseases.
It's not just about losing weight. It's about helping people live healthier, happier lives.
Exactly. Feeling better both physically and mentally.
But even if we develop amazing treatments, it's not going to solve everything, right?
Of course not. Obesity is complex. We need to keep promoting healthy lifestyles, tackling things like food insecurity.
Making sure everyone has access to healthy food choices, no matter where they live or how much money they make.
Absolutely. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, so we've talked about treatments, the impact on public health, but could this discovery have implications beyond obesity?
Oh, for sure. It could shed light on all sorts of conditions related to appetite and eating.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, think about eating disorders. Anorexia, bulimia.
Those are so complex and difficult to treat.
They really are, but maybe those stop-eating neurons are involved somehow. Maybe there's something going on with those signals.
So this could potentially lead to new treatments for eating disorders.
It's possible. And not just eating disorders. Think about conditions like Prader-Willi syndrome, where people experience constant, intense hunger.
Wow, so many potential applications.
It really is mind-blowing. We started with a single study in mice, And now we're talking about revolutionizing how we approach all these different conditions.
It's amazing how one discovery can lead to so many possibilities.
It really shows you the power of scientific research.
Okay, I'm officially overwhelmed with excitement. But before we get too carried away, let's bring it back down to earth for a sec. What are the key takeaways for this discussion?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that scientists have found this group of neurons in the brainstem that seem to be acting as a stop eating switch. They integrate all sorts of information to regulate our appetite.
And while the research is still in its early stages, the fact that these neurons are located in such an ancient part of the brain suggests that humans probably have them too.
And that opens up a world of possibilities for new treatments, not just for obesity, but potentially for a wide range of conditions related to appetite and eating.
It's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of research. We need more studies, especially in humans, to confirm these findings and develop safe and effective treatments.
Absolutely. And even when we have those treatments, they need to be part of a bigger picture.
Right. It's not just about biology. It's about behavior, environment, social factors, all working together.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to make healthy choices and creating a world that supports those choices.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential for treatments, the impact on public health, all sorts of amazing possibilities. But there's one more thing I want to explore, something super fascinating.
Oh, what's that?
It has to do with the evolutionary origins of these stop-eating neurons. Like, why did our brains even evolve this complex system for regulating food intake in the first place?
Now you're talking. It's a question that takes us way back in time to the very roots of our survival instincts.
Back to a time when finding food wasn't as easy in ordering takeout on our phones.
Exactly, a time when getting enough to eat was a constant struggle, and those ancient challenges actually shaped the way our brains work today.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Well, get ready to travel back in time with us. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll uncover the fascinating evolutionary history of appetite control and explore how those ancient forces still influence us today.
Welcome back, deep divers. We left off talking about something pretty amazing.
The evolutionary history of appetite control.
Exactly. Like, why do our brains work the way they do when it comes to food? It all goes back to our ancient ancestors.
Millions of years ago, way back when they were roaming around hunting and gathering.
Not exactly a quick trip to the grocery store.
Nope, back then, finding food was a daily challenge.
I can't even imagine. What was that like for them?
Well, they lived in a world where food was scarce and unpredictable. They never knew when their next meal would be.
That's got to be stressful.
You bet. In that kind of environment, overeating wasn't really a big concern. The real danger was not eating enough.
Makes sense. You'd want to stock up on calories whenever you could.
Exactly. Natural selection would have favored those who could really pack it in when food was available.
The ultimate feast or famine situation.
Right. And that strong drive to eat, well, we've inherited that. It's why we still get those powerful hunger signals from our brains.
So that's why I can never resist a second helping of dessert.
Maybe. But seriously, if we've got this hardwired drive to eat, how did the stop eating signal even evolve? It seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, like, why would our bodies develop a way to stop us from doing something that was so crucial for survival?
It's a good question. It turns out that while overeating wasn't the biggest threat back then, it wasn't exactly harmless either.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine you're one of our ancestors and you stumble across a huge patch of berries. You gorge yourself because, hey, who knows when you'll find food again? But then all that food makes you slow and sluggish.
And that's bad news if there's a predator lurking nearby.
Exactly. Suddenly you're an easy target. Overeating could actually make you more vulnerable.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
So there was definitely a downside to eating too much. But there's another important factor here. Nutrients.
Right. I think it's not just about calories. It's about getting the right mix of nutrients to stay healthy.
Absolutely. Back then, food sources were diverse, but also sometimes scarce.
So you might have plenty of one type of food, but be lacking in others.
Exactly. So it was super important to consume a variety of nutrients for optimal health and survival.
And that might be where the stop eating signal comes in.
Right on. A signal that incorporates information about nutrient content would help ensure that individuals had a more balanced diet, even when they were super hungry.
It's like having an internal nutritionist saying, hey, you've had enough berries, go find some protein or something.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if those stop eating neurons are so sensitive to signals from the gut because those signals carry information about the nutrients we're absorbing.
It's like a sophisticated feedback loop. Our brains are constantly monitoring what we're eating and adjusting our appetite accordingly.
It's pretty incredible, right? This whole system evolved to ensure our ancestors were getting the right balance of nutrients for optimal health and survival.
Okay, so we've traveled back in time and explored the origins of our stop eating switch. But let's fast forward to the present day. We're not exactly living in the Stone Age anymore.
Nope. We've got grocery stores and restaurants and food delivery apps. Food is everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not just any food. It's often highly processed, calorie-dense stuff.
And that's where things get tricky. Our ancient brains, those haven't quite caught up to our modern lifestyles.
You're saying we're still wired to eat like we're living in a world of scarcity, even though we're surrounded by food.
Exactly. Our brains are still sending those eat, eat, eat signals even when we don't need to. And all that tempting, calorie-rich food around us, well, it doesn't help.
It's like our brains are stuck in overdrive.
It's like they're saying, stock up on calories, who knows when you'll find food again.
So we're fighting a constant uphill battle, our ancient programming versus our modern world.
It's a mismatch that's contributing to the obesity epidemic.
Okay, so what can we do about it? How do we reconcile our Stone Age brains with our 21st century lives?
Well, that's where this new research comes in. Now that we know about these stop-eating neurons, we might be able to target them directly.
Maybe develop treatments that boost that stop-eating signal?
Exactly. If we can strengthen that signal, people might be able to regain control over their appetite, make healthier choices.
Even when they're surrounded by temptation.
Exactly. But it's not all about medications. Understanding the evolutionary context of our eating behaviors can help us develop more effective strategies overall.
Like, knowing why we crave certain foods can help us make better choices.
Exactly. It's about working with our biology, not against it.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today. We've talked about groundbreaking science, the potential for new treatments, and even traveled back in time.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has. And it just shows you how much we still have to learn about the incredible complexity of our brains.
There's always more to discover. But this new research has definitely opened up some exciting new avenues.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this fascinating journey into the world of appetite control.
And remember, the next time you feel that urge to reach for another slice of cake, just think about those ancient hunter-gatherers and the amazing legacy they've passed down to us.
It just might help you make a healthier choice. Thanks for listening to the deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another exploration into the world of science and discovery.